any legislative body may decide on the basis of overwhelming evidence of fraud to send electors to the Electoral College who accurately reflect the president's legitimate victory in their state, which was illegally denied him through fraud. We must be prepared to lobby our Republican legislatures.
That was longtime Republican strategist and Trump ally Roger Stone on November 5th, 2020, 2 days after the presidential election, after votes had been cast, but before the race had been called. And what you heard is Stone laying out the plan for how Republicans were going to attempt to steal that election, pushing the fake electors plot. Now Stone is back and giving up the playbook once again on how they are going to give it another try during this year's election. It comes in a secret recording from progressive activist and documentarian Lauren Windsor, who brought us the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito tapes last week. This one is from a Catholic event in March at Mar-a-Lago, where Stone was the keynote speaker.
We're working on it. Lawyers, judges, technology.
What stops them from just like voting on? Like
they in some states it'll be easier to stop them. In other places it won't. But at least this time, when they do it, you have a lawyer and a judge whose home phone number standing by so you can stop it. We made no preparations last time. None. We showed it half a dozen places. And they really profound and now on offensive footing.
And there it is. They're going to try and get the judges in on the game. And while Trump's team lost over 60 lawsuits contesting the last election, they've learned a lot since that time. And they know now how best to utilize the more than 200 judges Trump put in place, like little ticking time bombs, to aid in their efforts. Now, that's not to say each of those appointed judges would be willing to do Trump's bidding, but when you look at what is going on in Trump's classified documents case in Florida with Trump-appointed Judge Eileen Cannon, there is the question of who else may be willing to help. Stone responded in Rolling Stone, which first published these recordings, saying, quote, "All of the election integrity provisions that I suggested are perfectly legal and should be part of any ballot security effort. He has claimed in the past that his efforts in the 2020 election were legal, too. This leads to another question, which is, what will Democrats do now that they know the plan and it's out there? Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, who is a candidate for the United States Senate and is a former member of the January 6th Select Committee. Congressman, it is such a pleasure to see you. There is so much about this that I would love to get you in the meat of, because not only if they tell you who they are, you should believe them, but Congressman, when they tell you what they're going to do, you should believe them too. So knowing what we know and have already learned, how do Democrats create the necessary levels of engagement to push back, further expose, and defeat these efforts to use our judicial system to steal the election?
Well, Michael, you're absolutely right. They are telling us what they would do. And more than that, they've already shown us, because they've tried it once before. Stone's point is this time we will succeed in overturning the election if we lose. And I think we're in a more dangerous, more fraught position in this upcoming election than we were in the last one, because the Republican Party tragically has consolidated around the big lie and around the big liar. And they have had time to essentially put in place different electors, as well as different laws at the state level to try to disenfranchise voters on the front end, but also that they can tap should they lose after the election. So we've seen this playbook before. They're going to run it again. They're better positioned to run it this time. The very best thing that we can do to try to thwart that effort to overturn the election is to make sure the election isn't close. Really, the other remedies that we might employ if we had to appeal through the courts, for example, we can't trust the Supreme Court. And so the only remedy we really have, aside from doing everything possible to inform the electorate, to inform voters, they're running the same playbook, folks. They're going to say any vote counted after Election Day is somehow fraudulent, knowing that absentee votes sometimes are different voters. That is, it may be one demographic that votes on Election Day, another that votes, by absentee ballot. They're going to run the same false playbook, so we need to inform people about it, and we also need to turn people out so this election isn't close.
So, Congressman, you have Laura Trump, who's the co-chair of the Republican National Committee. She was at Turning Point USA's Actions Detroit Convention, and she had this to say about the message they want to put out there on the street.
We are also sending a loud and clear message out there to anyone who thinks about cheating in an election. If you cheat in an election, we will find you, we will track you down, and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law.
I'd say that's a little bit of projection to some extent, because all of that could be applied to what they're already planning to do. They've already made a big deal about amassing over 100,000 people who will be poll watchers, which is nothing more than just voter intimidation at various polling places. What are you hearing and seeing coming out of the ranks of the Democratic Party across the country, creating the coalitions and the efforts to also safeguard against what is clearly a stated effort to catch cheating by Republicans, but instead really claiming it's Democrats are the ones doing the cheating?
Well, that statement you just played was very rich, considering that with their whole fake elector plot, this is exactly what they were trying to do, defraud voters of their legitimately cast ballots. But in terms of what the Democratic Party is doing, we are very concerned that they're going to try to suppress the vote in many ways, suppress it, as I mentioned, with these voter suppression laws, but also suppress it with having people intimidate others at the polling places and putting out messages that essentially try to discourage people. And, we've seen in California and certainly in other parts of the country as well, efforts in particular to discourage voters of color from going to the polling place through intimidation and scare tactics. We want to make sure that we push back against that we have legitimate efforts at voter protection. And so, we are, I think, marshaling election experts and others to volunteer and try to make sure there isn't that kind of intimidation going on, that everybody's vote is counted, that where these states have purged voter rolls in an effort to make it even harder for people to vote, that we're getting people re-registered. So we are taking this as serious as a heart attack, because at the end of the day, Michael, as you've often pointed out, this is going to be close, and it's all going to come down to who turns out. And given the efforts Republicans are telegraphing, it also may come down to whether they succeed in invalidating the legitimate votes of people.
So just real quickly before we let you go, Congressman, you're in your race for the United States Senate. There are races like yours around the country in blue and red states. What concerns you right now as we are 4 months out about our election process and what the American people believe or think about it?
Well, I'm actually quite optimistic. As you were discussing earlier on the show, our Senate candidates, the Democratic Senate candidates, are running ahead in each of these elections. We do have to run the table to hold on to the Senate. But I think we're going to run the table. We've got the best candidates in these states. And on the other side of the aisle, a lot of the MAGA people who won Republican primaries are going to be fairly weak opponents. I totally concur with the point that was made earlier that when these candidates, these Republican candidates, fail again, when Donald Trump fails again, the Republican Party will finally move on, not for the sake of our country, but for the sake of their own party. They just can't keep losing as they have with, their biggest loser, Donald Trump.
Yep, there it is. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much, sir, for taking some time.